Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to another one of the Paratus podcast live stream things. You all know who I am, and I'm joined tonight by Marius Roodt, who is not only a researcher at the Institute of Race Relations. We've got this weird online friendship, what do you call it? Bromance thing going on. Depends if you follow us on Twitter or not. And well, yes, thanks. Thank you so much for actually, I don't know, taking a time out of your schedule, because I know you guys are more of a busy in what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's Wednesday night, so normally I'm not too busy on Wednesday night, so I managed to fit you in this time, eh? So, but thanks for having me.
Yeah. Excellent, because you guys from the IRR are more of an elusive. I've been trying to get him Piyaki, and he's just like avoiding me like the plague. That's when he's not getting banned on Facebook. I mean, at least he's still on Twitter. But
Gideon, the problem might be that Piyaki doesn't work for us.
Oh shit! He's with the other guys. Oh gosh, sorry.
Piyaki is a policy fellow, and he does write for the Daily Friend, which is what do you call it? Like an online platform for news and opinion that we have. So he does work for us, and he is on our council, but he's not one of our employees. So
it's like I walked into that one solidly. I keep doing stuff like this. But sorry, from my lighting setup, it looks like I'm from some sort of David Lynch movie. So the audience must just cope with it. Like you're getting the Eraserhead lighting here, the Twin Peaks. Just to give a bit of background, major difference between Marius and I is where I'm a complete right-wing gun nut. Well, not so much right-wing, but very much a gun nut. Marius isn't so into guns, but you've got a really cool policy position on it, whereas you believe very firmly, well, you must stop me if I'm incorrectly positioning here, in the right to choose, whether or not you want to be a legal farmer or not. And that's actually a really, really awesome, well, that's pretty much aligned with what the IRR believes in general. And you wrote that really cool Broken Blue Line 3 report that I put on my website. Well, it is on the website. It's been there since publication, but it's also recently been on my Facebook page attached to the publication. That was a hell of a lot of research you did, Marius. Is there anything particular about that stood out to you? Because the amount of criminality in the cops that you read about and wrote about was extensive.
Yeah, it was quite scary. I mean, just for people who maybe haven't read it, we looked at 100, we looked at case of criminality in the police. I think we looked over a 3-year period or something, and we found over 100 cases and it ranged from like fairly petty stuff, not petty, but where cops would go to unemployed people and say, look, if you pay us $500, we'll get your job in the JMPD or something, to like really serious stuff with murders and rapes and that kind of thing, So, and it's quite scary that, I mean, the cops are the guys who are supposed to be supporting and protecting people, and a lot of them are the ones involved in crime. But I mean, at the same time, I just want to say that even though there are a lot of cases, I mean, you'll probably know more, but I mean, there's lots of people who work in the SAPS and the various metropolitan police departments, and I'm sure the vast majority are good, well-meaning people who just trying to do a job in very hard circumstances. But there are some bad apples, and we all know bad apple often spoils the barrel. So,
that's it. Yeah. Okay, Sorry, Marius. No, Karen, you're going on there.
No, I was just going to say, I'm not sure if we're allowed to drink beer. I see you having coffee. I thought we were drinking.
No, I already had 2 beers before the show.
Okay, cool.
Otherwise, I still, funnily enough, have some research pieces to write tonight that got sent to me. So I can't be completely incoherent, but I'm close. So you're still catching up to me.
Yeah,
because you've got Castle Light there. That's not even actually beer. So
come on, man. Jeez, I like a bit of a, what do you call it, every now and again, craft beer, but there's nothing wrong with Castle Light. But I was looking at that report again today, and just the 2 things that stood out for me the most also from that report is that since the mid-90s, our crime rates was actually dropping up until about 2011, 2012. And since then, it's been increasing. And I mean, especially like the best way to actually measure crime in a country is murders, because murder is the one crime that'll always get reported. If it's hard to hide a dead body, and a dead body normally gets found and they'll get reported. And so we're still quite below the levels that we saw in the mid-90s, but I can't remember the exact numbers now, but since the mid-90s, as I say, for nearly 20 years, we had a steady drop in the murder rates every year. And then from 2011, 2012, we've had a steady increase. And I mean, that's for a number of reasons. I think the police itself was hollowed out. I think we've seen the state itself be hollowed out, and we all know why. We all know what happened in 2009 and what happened in changes in governments and so on. And the police themselves are hollowed out. I think institutions in the country in general have been hollowed out since 2009, 2010. And the other issue that was also quite worrying for me is that one of the things I looked in the report was the faith that people had in the police and in the judiciary. And both of those had been dropping over the past 4 years that the statistic I used showed. So that tells you also two things. People are losing faith in the cops and the broader system, which is a problem. So that also means you're probably going to see increases in things like mob violence and so on. And I mean, mob violence is obviously a terrible thing. I mean, you can't really excuse it, but it's easy for us, we're sitting in fairly safe middle-class places and say, mob violence is a bad thing. But if you're hut full of crime and the cops never come to where you are, or you don't see the cops doing anything, then sometimes it happens. And I mean, the problem with that, obviously, I mean, often there'll probably be an innocent person who gets hurt in the issues during mob violence and so on. And I mean, it can never be excused, but you can see why it sometimes happens. So, and those are two things that were quite concerning for me.
No, that's a huge, Marius, and I think everything that you wrote in that report ties in hugely with the current. If I want to sound really obnoxious, I can say zeitgeist, but let's just be honest with the current time we're living in right now. And because people in the comment section are like, hello, everyone. I can see all of you, the Facebook people and the YouTube people, and Mareike, my favorite purple cow, Moo. Thank you. Good. Thanks for being here. And honorable notice to everyone from Cape Town who has to tell me where they're from, because I'm also from there, like Bernard and and Jason, and at least and Laurie is here. Obviously, Laurie is always here, and Anton and Spice and everyone. So hello to you all. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to us. But the Broken Blue Line report was one heck of a thing, and you were completely correct about the report rates of murder. And I don't know if you ever read any of Richard Wesson's research. It's not widely publicized at all. Okay, so I'll send you some of it, but separate methodologies, independently, everyone came to the same conclusion. And I think the homicide rate in the early 90s in SA was close to like nearly to 90 murders to 100,000 people. It was really sky high. It was ridiculous. Yeah. It came down all the way. It was on its longest downward trend, I think, in its history. And then just after the Firearms Control Act of 2000 became law, I think it was 2004, July, it had its first little bump, spiked up, came back down, and it continued its trend downwards until about 2011, which was ironically just after the first firearm amnesty, the one where Colonel Chris Burns stole all the guns with his colleagues and the cops, and he sold them to gangsters. Not that that's necessarily a causal factor. It's just a really, really fun little coincidence to point out to people like, well, shortly after that happened, because let's be honest, we know that that's not an isolated case in the police. That's the one that made it into the news, but there's probably a hell of a lot more going on. Further complicating the problem, bullying within the SAPS is like a well-known thing. So if you're a good cop and you want to do good stuff, but your colleagues are more criminal than you, the chances of you actually being granted the freedom to speak out or to, say something or make a difference, it's very limited. Is there any Broken Blue Line 4 in the workings, or is it spaced out a bit further than presently?
I mean, I wrote Broken Blue Line 3 in 2018, I think, and the first one was written in 2011. So, we don't have like a set time when we have them, which is kind of like, because I wasn't involved in those first two, and then the third one, thought it's been about 3 or 4 years. Let's see if there's been any change. And like, unsurprisingly, there hadn't been a change. Unfortunately, I mean, there's still very easy to find issues of criminality within the police and so on. But there's obviously some. I mean, it's a culture within the police. I mean, I think we just see now with what happened with Collins Causa in Alexandra, where I mean, the guy was. We all know what happened. I suppose we don't have to rehash it. But apparently there were some JMPD cops involved as well. It wasn't just SANDF guys, and that's all been covered up. Nobody knows what's happened with that. And apparently Collins Causa's death was caught on a cell phone camera. But the people who taped it were also assaulted by the cops, and the videos were erased. So I mean, the only reason we know about what happened to George Floyd is because it was on a cell phone camera. Yep. And I mean, you don't want to. it's never nice watching somebody getting assaulted or murdered even. But maybe if we'd had that, maybe Collins Causes Killers would be much closer to being brought to justice than they are now. So, but I mean, I think it's obviously something within the police. It's kind of a culture of impunity. And I mean, from what I've read, you may know more, but it seems as the US cops have a similar position. I mean, the unions seem very powerful in the American police, and they have a thing where, as I say, you probably know more about it, but it seems it's quite hard to keep to hold American cops accountable for when there's police brutality there and so on. And we've seen, I mean, it's hard to keep a South African cop accountable for things that happen here. And I was just interested what you were saying about bullying. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson's also written about it a lot, where, you know, ordinary people end up doing awful things often. I mean, we saw in Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, even to a degree during apartheid, and we all like to think we'll be one of the good guys. You know, we won't become like them. But I think it's easy to say, but if you're in that situation, and it's probably the same with the policeman. You know, a guy with all the best intentions in the world, but he's, you know, maybe not even surrounded by rotten cops, but maybe just one or two guys who kind of control the, you know, whatever the station, whatever it is, and it's hard to speak out. Also, these guys are violent. You speak out, and who knows, you might get shot in an accident or criminal shoots you or something.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, but it's worrying that we, you know, I mean, and as I say, the cops are the guys you're supposed to be protecting people. So,
well, that's it. That's part of the huge problem, and it's, I mean, I'll ask you about the Peelian principles now. That was this is the trick question, the exam time, but. I really like the analogy of Nazi Germany popping up, and I'll tell you why. So today, to all your viewers, all 35 of you who are tuned in right now, which is really cool. Thanks for being here. You're going to be the first people to hear this outside of like official lines, but I officially resigned today. I am no longer employed by the state, and this wasn't like the primary reason for me resigning. Was it's a long, complicated story, and one day we can unpack it. I'll unpack it directly with the audience. But all the trains to German concentration camps were ordinary Deutsche Reichsbahn, like German railways trains. So they all had normal German railways trains with German railways machinists, because that's what you call a train driver. You don't call it a train driver, call it a machinist. They were all normal employees of this company. And even though they're not directly accountable for having murdered any Jews, they were all on the train. Sorry, they were operating the train that took everyone to the death camps, for want of a better word. So, and the entire railway system made it a lot more efficient to, you know, get the final solution to the rate it was going. Now, I'm not saying, you know, the Holocaust is comparable to state capture and looting. But if we just boil it down to base principles, if we look at the ANC wanting to loot pension funds to fund parastatals, I can't in good conscience sit and go, you know what, I'm employed by one of these organizations. I just work here. The whole I just work here defense doesn't work for me anymore. And it's just easier to walk away from it. Well, I'll sleep easier at night knowing I've walked away from it. But it's the same problem with the police, is having chatted to cops on the inside, a lot of them want to walk away, but they feel they can't. But at the same time, they're also to a degree complicit in the bad things that are being done. And you're right when you say there's a problem in America. There is an issue with American policing. I'm not an expert. I can't tell you exactly what it is. I'm going to need to do a bit more reading. But just from what we can see, there's clearly a problem. And I don't think that they're particularly governed by Peelian principles or any sort of framework like that. Are you familiar with it, Marius?
I think we're chatting on that Renegade Report group, and I think you mentioned just the Peelian principles. It's kind of just the concept that you've got to accept you've got to accept the authority over you. So you accept that these guys are going to be your cops. Same it's also a theory in democracy. It's the consent to the governed. You've got to consent to be governed by these people. Maybe you don't necessarily agree with them, but you consent that they will be the ones governing you. I assume same with the police. You consent that these guys will be keeping the rules and the law and order in your neighborhood, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, look, that's a very sort of basic summary of it, but it's also, if you look at the way it's worded, the law enforcement aspect of being a policeman, according to those principles, isn't like the be all and end all. You almost turn a policeman into, at the same time, a bit of he's a member of a community, he has to be, but he's also a bit of a social worker at the same time. And the element where, he's catching criminals and enforcing laws is just a part of the job. It's not a one-trick pony only. And I get a very strong feeling that modern law enforcement kind of leaves out those important parts of what true community-based policing is. And then you start ending up with these massive problems. We've got huge runaway criminality in the cops, as your report indicates. And I mean, you can see all the stuff that's been happening during lockdown. Now, the IRR has been very vocal in opposing what's being done. What's actually going on there with you guys with the whole anti-lockdown stance? Because you've been busy.
Well, in the beginning, we were pro the lockdown, but I think we've opposed the continuing, basically hard lockdown we've had. I mean, the thing is, the lockdown's not going to stop anybody getting sick now. The point of the lockdown was to buy us time, which looks like it didn't, because surprise, the government was very inefficient, and we've only got, who knows what the exact numbers are, but it seems like we've got very few extra beds and so on. So, but I mean, and we've seen how much the virus spread even during lockdown, because the fact of the matter is you can't lock down, you can't do a European-style lockdown in a country like South Africa, or most countries in the world, actually. I mean, Marius and Lozi from the EFF, who I thought was clever, said the fact that New Zealand managed to get, or I used to think it was clever, I stopped thinking it was clever a while ago, actually. He said New Zealand proved that a lockdown gets rid of coronavirus, because New Zealand's done very well with it. But New Zealand has less people than Johannesburg. It's a high trust, fairly homogenous society. It's a well-functioning democracy. So and people can probably stay at home for 2 weeks and not have to go anywhere. You can't do that in South Africa. I mean, we were getting 1,000 extra cases a day during the lockdown. So it just shows that lockdown, I mean, in the beginning, it was probably the right idea, but since then we've seen that the government's messed up completely, which we're probably all fairly unsurprised about. And as my colleague Anthea Jeffrey said, we've actually basically been in a 10-year lockdown, with the government policies that have restricted economic growth, and we've had creeping restrictions on our freedoms and so on. But I mean, the main thing has been we've had bad economic policy for over 10 years now, and that's why we've had falling. Our wealth per capita has been falling for the last 5 or 6 years, and it's going to continue to fall. And who knows how bad it's going to fall this year because of the coronavirus depression that we're all going to have. So.
In more ways than one. It's not just the economic depression either.
Exactly. I mean, who knows what kind of what states of people's mental health is going to be off this. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to have some mental health issues coming out of this lockdown, whether they had lack of human contact, or because they lost their jobs or savings, or whatever the case was, or just the state of the country was worrying them to such a large degree, or whatever the issue is. But also the problem is, we know that the government, from what has been saying, it's not going to do what it needs to do. We're going to carry on with the same failed policies we have for the last 10 years. And South Africa's had a lost decade. We're going to have a lost 2 decades if we're not careful. And who knows if there'll be anything left in 10 years' time. Because as I say, the country's been on a downward economic trend for 5-6 years now, and doesn't look like there's. And we do. I mean, you'll know, you in the airline industry, they want to save SAA still. It's like R.W. Johnson said, it's like trying to resurrect a dodo. Like the dodo can't fly, number one, and extinct.
Yeah, I was about to say flightless and extinct. There you go.
Exactly. And it's just like my senior colleague Frans Cornier says, he says what they're going to do with SAA was going to be the canary in the coal mine about reform. If they're going to get serious about SAA and get rid of it and do things properly, then maybe we're going to have proper economic reform in South Africa. But we've seen what's happened. I mean, it's given the fact that they're ideologues, but surely you can't carry on denying reality. Sure, okay, cool, you guys like states control the economy or whatever, but you can see SAA is not working. And how much money could we have used on building clinics and schools and the roads and all kinds of things that's been sunk into SAA it's a vanity project, and to keep 5,000 people's jobs, really.
And the only capital that SAA has is it's got some human capital. And not all the pilots are worth keeping, not all the cabin crew, not all the engineers, but there's some really good people who work there and they've worked there for a very long time, but that's about it. The one thing I'm glad about no longer being, an airline pilot is I don't have to go to Airways Park to use their simulator facility and just experience that incredible depression that is visiting that building. If ever you wanted to see a dead building that represents a dead idea and a dead company, but the corpse just refuses to be cremated, it's Airways Park. I mean, it's an absolutely depressing place. And it is such an amazing example or apt example of South African state control over anything, as they say. And the fact that we're still trying to rescue it right now, when we are absolutely dumped we're not even in the middle of and guys, this is not me being pessimistic, because if I were a complete pessimist, I'd probably take a rat poison. We wouldn't be having this interview tonight. So, or this discussion, this conversation. But the fact is, we're not out of the woods yet. We're at the very beginning of the shit show now. This is where stuff getting bad starts. This is where hard mode begins for the game ahead. And the fact that the government is still focused on keeping SAA afloat in between the complete shit show that it is, tells us everything we need to know about their priorities. But I mean, we've had a whole bunch of people murdered by the cops and the police. It's more than 11 now. But we're focusing on a dead guy in America, Marius. And we'll have to wear black on Friday because of this. Like, how does this work? You guys still interact with the ANC, I suppose, on policy level to some degree. They clearly don't listen to you, but I mean, you guys do advise.
Well, I mean, there's they listen to us occasionally. Sometimes you'll be surprised. I mean, Cyril Ramaphosa, he gave a speech to, I'm not sure it was in a synagogue 2 years ago, I think, just after he became president. And he actually quoted one of our reports, just talking about the progress South Africa has made. And it's according to France, my boss, he said a couple of times he's had contact with the guys in the ANC, and they do ask our advice. But I mean, I think for a lot of these guys, there's two things probably. There's ideologues who just think this is the way to do things, and the other guys, they know it's not going to work, but they just don't think they can break the grip of the ideologues. So I mean, but you get some of the guys. I mean, Tito Mboweni, I think, is quite a brave guy. I don't necessarily agree with him with everything, but he is. You can see he knows what we need to do to fix South Africa. At least he's got some of the right ideas.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's still, I mean, maybe it's me clutching at straws and gives me sort of some hope. The fact that he's still the finance minister, which is probably the second most powerful position in the cabinet after the president himself. The fact that Tito Mboweni is still there, and he comes and he says things on Twitter. He hasn't been gagged. I think he's been semi-gagged, but he still says things occasionally.
Yeah, he still says what he wants. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So apparently he's been reprimanded in NEC meetings and so on. But the fact that he's still there and he hasn't been fired yet by Cyril, or the really dodgy elements in the ANC have managed to get rid of him yet, makes me think maybe there's still a possibility of reform. But the more, I mean, the noises coming out the government, and they're talking about more state control of the economy after COVID, and SACP's come out and said this is a great opportunity to discipline private capital, and all this kind of rhetoric that's straight out the 1960s. The thing is, like, the free market is not perfect. Capitalism is not perfect. We know that, but it's been the best way.
Yeah, but we've never claimed it was perfect. That's what people don't understand.
100%. But I mean, it's been the best. That is why so many people leave poverty every year since the 1980s. That's the reason China has gone from having over 1 billion people living in poverty to having about 400 million, or whatever the case is. And that's because China, in its way, adopted free market policies. And the fact that the ANC is trapped in this, like this 1960s moribund way of thinking. It's going to be the downfall of definitely the ANC and perhaps even South Africa. So, and I mean, I put on Twitter the other day and I said, it can't happen here. It's one of the most dangerous phrases in the English language, because it makes you think that, we'll never go like Venezuela. We'll never go like Zimbabwe. And even, like watching this stuff in the US, like I don't think it will, but you don't think, could this be the collapse of, the US itself, or of democracy in the US? It's like the stuff that's happening there is crazy. And I mean, look, I understand why these protests are happening, and I support them to a degree, but I mean, obviously the violence behind it and the way it's been taken over by these people like Antifa and these types of guys, makes me worried. And I mean, to be honest, Donald Trump is not the guy you want to be handling a situation like this, where flipping just one spark and then the tinder will go up. So
look, I prefer him over Hillary.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, like, if I was an American in 2016, yes, I probably would have voted for Hillary. I've got to be honest, and I'd probably voted.
We've got our first Hillary voter on the channel, and no one is hating on you. No one is hating on you in the comments. I've got such a well-behaved audience.
No, it's also. I mean, I wouldn't. It's only. I mean, because Donald Trump is not a great leader. He was also a terrible candidate, but Hillary was even a worse candidate. I mean, the Democrats could have put up anybody against Trump, and they would have beaten Trump. Remember, Hillary still got 3 million more votes than Trump. But
well, now they've got Biden.
Biden's going to beat him easily.
Okay, shall we do an official bet? A bottle of what? Okay, what do you drink?
Beer or red wine, eh?
Okay, beer or red wine. Okay, so we'll do a bottle of red wine. We'll determine which specific sort of type. We'll set a price range, all this stuff. But okay, on here, I'll bet you that Biden's not going to get it, and you better be that Biden's going to take it. Okay, cool.
No,
but
also, let me I just finished reading a book now. Let me just get it here. I'm reversed here. Let me see. A very stable genius. A very stable genius. And it's about Donald Trump. And it's that guy has, as somebody said to me the other day, he's the American Zuma, and they're right. Because Donald Trump has no respect. No, but it's true. He has no respect for the institutions of the United States. There's no real respect for democracy. I mean, okay, this book was written by 2 Washington Post journalists. Also take it from whence it comes. But I mean, it's not like this didn't come out of nowhere. Like, we've heard this kind of stuff, and there's lots of Republicans who don't like Donald Trump either. And, you know, Colin Powell came out now and said he's going to vote for Joe Biden in November. So, and that tells you something. So, you know, and Colin Powell's not exactly, you know, he's not a lefty SJW guy. He's quite a right-wing Republican dude, and he's going to vote for Biden. But just, I mean, this book, I mean, just, as I say, Trump has no respect for the institutions of the United States. He has no respect for the institutions of democracy. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. And he brought in, I mean, the way that he brought in Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump into basically his administration, you know, he didn't worry about things like security clearances and stuff. You know, they couldn't give one to Kushner because of issues. He said to his chief of staff, said, I don't care, just get him one. You know, and the guy said to him, I can't do it. Like, you can't just because the president says, I want this to happen, you still got to follow the procedures. So, but I think that's partly why these photos are happening. I just don't think Donald Trump's, who knows, maybe they would have been happening if Hillary Clinton become president.
Well, no, the cool thing is, like, at least no one can accuse my channel of being an echo chamber. But, no, those are, like, it's valid points. I just like the fact that, because I'm a bit of an accelerationist, I think a lot of the federal institutions don't have a right to exist. They should actually be done away with. Maybe by having Donald Trump break them is not necessarily the most efficient way of getting rid of them. But, you know, if we're going to have a tornado in the White House for 2 terms, or even just one, hopefully the trail of destruction sort of gets rid of some of the stuff that we don't want there to be anymore. I'm really hoping for that, because the one thing that I do think he's right on is that the political establishment is a swamp in that country. And I think one of the most cringeworthy moments for me was when the Democrats went with their like very stereotypical African dress. Was it today or yesterday?
The scarves, those scarves.
And someone made a Lion King meme out of it. Did you see that?
Yeah, with the Nancy Pelosi, and there's like a giraffe, and it's got the African stick and stuff.
It was ridiculous. I'm going to try find it quickly, see if I can put it on the screen. Sorry, not scream, but people might scream. Let's see Pelosi and her Africa meme, because it was you could just hear the Lion King theme song playing, like Circle of Life. I can't bloody find it. This is an absolute tragedy, because it was the best thing I've ever seen, and I can't find it. It's gone. Not Marius. I don't know if you go on your side, but it was.
I've got it on WhatsApp. Let me quickly see if I can find it here.
Yeah, if you can WhatsApp it to me, then I can show everyone who's watching. But it was absolutely brilliant, and it just. Have we reached full cult status with this BLM thing at the moment?
Yes, I don't know. Like, I don't know enough about it to have a proper opinion, but like I've said, I'm quite wary of it, and I do think it's got some worrying. It's from some of the people, some of their demands are really quite out there. I mean, they're basically calling for the collapse of liberal capitalism, and these things aren't going to.
That's never a good sign,
No, exactly. And obviously there are issues with. I mean, black people have had issues in the United States, obviously, but it just seems like Black Lives Matter. It just seems to be quite. I don't know. They scare me a bit, I must say, but. They seem to they got so much support in the US now at the moment, even from white Americans. So it either tells you that maybe they're doing something right, or that there has been some kind of I don't want to call it brainwashing, but gaslighting, that people are sort of buying into this this ideology so quickly. So and it's also it's almost like the critical race theory mind virus has left the universities and it's now most of society.
Or always seeing a biased picture, and I think the best hang on, I just got a comment here that's from Anzabet. She's late to the party, but it's okay, Anzabet. You can be late anytime. But can we give some FITA case views and predictions? Now, can I just be brutally honest with you and tell you straight that I have no idea what that abbreviation means, Marius?
I'm sorry, I just found the. It's the tobacco people, I think.
Oh, thank God. Okay, see, I've been really out of touch today. So she wants to know what's going on with that, if we know.
I just know that I don't follow that closely today, but I know NDZ's lawyers were in court, and apparently they did a very poor showing, and they didn't manage to. And so I just WhatsApped you that the Nancy Pelosi meme, by the way. So
okay, what I'm going to do now is I need to do a three-way with it. That sounds really dodgy. I need to get it from my WhatsApp, but carry on with the tobacco story in the meantime.
So as far as I know, that the NDZ's lawyers did not acquit themselves very well, and they looked fairly silly trying to defend why keeping the tobacco ban in place and so on. And I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, I'm not a smoker, but really. I wouldn't be upset if there's no smoking in South Africa continuous time, but just the way that it's been done, people should have a friend of mine said, a friend of mine said to me, if they invented smoking today, do you think it'd be legal? I said, no, of course it wouldn't be, but it wasn't invented today. You can't say that. It's been part of our society since they brought tobacco from the Americas in the 1500s or whatever the case is. And if the government said, guys, on 1st January 2025, smoking is going to be illegal in South Africa. You won't be able to buy cigarettes. Actually, okay, that's cool. It's not great, but I have time to, wean myself off or whatever, get my illegal supply or whatever the case is. But it was this making law by diktat, which flipping we've been having. Same as the booze ban, all these things. I mean, the guy not being able to go surfing and stuff, it's been ridiculous. I mean, it's just the government. Half these rules have only been made because the government can do it. No other reason.
Exactly.
Not because it's going to stop people getting COVID or anything like that, just because the government can. And I mean, it tells you what's at the core of the ANC, actually.
Well, I mean, that was the whole thing about the rotisserie chicken and hot coffee, and there was not a single rational, reasonable piece of lockdown-related legislation that came out of this thing. It was absolutely ridiculous. Let me see if I can share this. So for all of you who are watching, hang on. Okay, I need to download the thing first. Hang on, it's getting there, guys. Just give me a second. This is a work in progress.
Maybe I can share my screen. Let me see.
You can, but I think I've just okay. I got it.
Okay, cool.
Now I just have to do share screen, and then it's this one. Boom. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to allow it. And there we go.
I didn't even see she got the thing with the lip as well. I didn't see that.
Yeah, and she's got an afro on the other one. It's brilliant.
But it's so condescending. Like, oh, that's going to stop, black people getting killed by policemen in America. Like, what's it going to do? Like, but did you see? So all these Democrats, they went and they took a knee and stuff. But they didn't. Then I saw a clip afterwards because all of them are quite old. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's, I think she's close to 80.
No, she's ancient. She's held together by Botox and sticky tape. It's ridiculous.
So when they try to get out, somebody had to come help her. Nancy Pelosi, yeah, but I mean, it's fair enough. The lady's like 80 or whatever, but like it loses some of its power when this lady can't even get up. I shouldn't laugh. But
I mean, it was hilarious. It was hilarious, Marius. So they're all kneeling. I don't know where it was. I thought it was some. I didn't know it was like an official, like Capitol building thing. It looked like a deserted train station. Yeah. And I was like, well, why are all these politicians kneeling in the train station? Then I was like, oh God, no! It's actually like an official, like government building with a really polished floor. And it looked like they were ancient Power Rangers wearing suits.
Yeah,
and they were all busy powering up. Before fighting evil or whatever. It was ridiculous. It was the most ridiculous pantomime. It's more of a funny.
The one thing I have to say that showed me is this George Floyd thing. Like, he wasn't a saint, and like maybe he's the wrong guy to be the martyr, but just the amount of people that have come out the woodwork and said, he was a bad guy, he did some bad things, whatever, 15 years ago. So, and they try to excuse what happened to him, and so maybe he's the wrong guy to be in the martyr, but he's the guy that was caught on camera, and he's sparked all this stuff. And just the way people have been excusing, it's bootlickers actually, because they're excusing the death of an innocent person actually at the hands of the state's minions. And I was just thinking, these people, if we shown a black policeman doing that to a white South African, and we found out this white South African guy was actually a bad guy, he done some bad things 10 years ago, with these same people who trying to excuse George Floyd's death, they also be saying, oh no, well, he was a bad guy. And that's a problem. We live in a society of rules and laws. Doesn't matter what a guy did. Even if George Floyd had shot somebody dead in front of those cops, they still couldn't have done that to him. They still have to arrest him properly, and he goes through the system and goes on trial and all that kind of stuff. And
that's why we've got due process, right? That's the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Marius. So what I was saying is it's important that people separate these two issues, and you have to separate them. You can be a complete scumbag, and we don't have to like you for being a scumbag, and we don't have to turn to your martyr. But at the same time, the concept is that whatever is applied to that person, whether he's the worst element of society or the best, it doesn't matter. Whatever excess or abuse at the hands of the government he suffers could just as easily have been somebody else. And I've had huge fights throughout the lockdown with people who said, the aggression that the police and the military have in the townships, those people kind of deserve it because they're not obeying the lockdown regulations. I go, people, at some point, this is going to come to the leafy suburbs. And then it did to some degree. And then all of a sudden, everyone got upset a couple of weeks later. And it's like, the problem is that there is no respect for the integrity of a citizen from these law enforcement officials, and it becomes a systemic problem. But
even even in the beginning, where we saw people having to do frog jumps and all that kind of stuff, sure, it's not as bad as a guy leaning on your neck for 9 minutes, but it's actually, you are making that the SNDF or the cops, whatever, did not have the right to make somebody do frog jumps or whatever the case is. All they could do is say, dude, go home. That's all they could do. They did not have the right to make people and humiliate people like they did. Look, I don't know what to call it, but I saw guys having to roll down hills and shit like that. And I saw some of my Facebook friends, white middle-class people say, oh yeah, well, it serves them right, they should be at home. Like, no, fuck off. They should be at home. Sure, it's lockdown. But the cops should not be doing that, or the SNDF should not be doing that to these people. And as you say, if you let that happen, then that's, I don't want to quite conflate it, but because we let the SNDF make people do frog jumps, that's why Collins Causa is dead. And the other people that died during lockdown.
Well, it's a symptom of the disease, isn't it? It's a case of, we don't have to say it's a causal factor, but here you sit with organization, the military and the police. They have their separate constitutional mandates. Then they've got their oaths to office, or whatever we want to call it, that their members / soldiers / whatever have to take, and their officers. And there's a whole code of conduct. And it's a very regulated affair. Like, everyone is supposed to know at all times what they are supposed to be doing. It's not generally, institutions that there's much leniency for gray areas because of the very nature of the work they do. And now you've got these excessive abuses that just kind of exceed the mandate, exceed the oath of office, exceeds the codes of conduct, and everyone's just okaying it. And then eventually you end up with really bad shit happening, and then we wonder where it's coming from.
But
and that's just not going to work.
But just for me, it's just the way our government has gone on about George Floyd. When they did that to Collins Khoza and Petrus Michels and Sibusiso Amos and the other guys, I don't know what their names are, but the other 8 or 9 guys that were killed during lockdown. And it makes me livid that they've gone about George Floyd. It's terrible what happened to George Floyd, of course, but it's not South African. Maybe, clean your own house before you start looking what's happening across the pond.
Absolutely.
And it makes me, and Ramaphosa is actually, he's such a duplicitous person, actually. Just made me, and he spoke about the security forces being too enthusiastic. Like, what are you talking about? People died. Exactly. Imagine Donald
Not
Trump.
slightly over. It's exactly. Like he's talking to them as if they're children. They're just slightly enthusiastic. It's like, no.
People died. But imagine Donald Trump had said that. Oh, Derek Chauvin was a bit over enthusiastic. People would rightly crucify the guy, And actually, if this had happened in the UK, for example, and the British military had been deployed on the streets of the UK and somebody been killed by a British soldier, Boris Johnson would have resigned. I'm telling you now.
Yeah.
Or probably have brought down the government. But in South Africa, nobody, not even the people who killed Collins Khoza, has lost their jobs. It blows my heart. And it's something we as South Africans have to be very worried about, because the government that's happy to do this to its citizens, and it makes all these nice noises and blah, blah, blah. But we know nothing's going to change, really. I mean, as I say, in a proper place, the Minister of Defense at least would have resigned over this whole thing. But nothing's happened. As I say, the people who actually even killed him, nothing's even happened to him. And probably nothing
there's no accountability. There's no transparency. Any of these great corporate buzzwords that the government tells us they believe in, bato pele tumamina, all this nonsense. None of that really exists. They just stuff I'm convinced that they're just something that the web developer that has the tender came up with and put it on the government website because it sounds cool. Because none of those institutions truly believe in any of these things, at least not if you can judge it by their actions. And this was a huge thing for me. You made a point that I made, exactly the same one. If Donald Trump had deployed the U.S. military to the streets of the U.S., as he has now done with the National Guard, Guard, ironically, the moment they were deployed, it was a huge hoo-ha. It was like, and this is a specific...
Not something you do lightly. It's not, you don't just go send, like, Southern Post, cool, I'm going to deploy the whole flipping SNDF on the streets of South Africa. People should be like, what are you doing? Why? Why do you have to do this?
Exactly. No, we are celebrating it. And meanwhile, in the US, the purpose of the National Guard is for these types of deployment/employments. That's why they're called that. So it's not a very controversial thing, but yet in the United States, when they were now, mobilized, it's a big issue. Here, nothing. It's just, we've got soldiers in the townships murdering people in the shacks again. This is like very 1985 or whatever you want to call it. Like nothing's really changed, but there's no outrage.
But even, the only reason there has been outrage is because George Floyd died, actually. This would have all gone away probably if George Floyd had died. The only reason now, and it's actually, and also
an American guy had to die before
Exactly, 100%. But also, and I've seen also people trying to twist themselves into knots and blame white supremacy for Collins Khoza's death. And it's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, seriously, like, we all know the history of South Africa, but like, seriously, you can't, I kind of get the point they're trying to make, but it's also like, blame the current government and blame those guys who killed Collins Khoza. Come, like, it's also kind of
we can't resurrect the spirit of a dead regime that's now been dead for like 26 years for something that's just happened.
Exactly, yeah.
The soldiers that killed him are probably not even that old.
No, exactly, early 20s or whatever the case is.
Yeah, so there's no immediate legacy we can blame. It's
but then also, even in the document that spoke about Collins Khoza's death, the reports, whatever, it said Collins Khoza and his brother-in-law were making lewd comments about the female soldiers. And it's also trying to use this like kind of woke SJW, like, oh no, they were being horrible to women. Like, so it kind of, even though we definitely didn't kill them, that's kind of why we were, had to beat them. And
Did you see that whole piece of writing? that his death is due to, what was it, gender discrimination or some
Yeah, I think
nonsense, some
that was from that report.
gender inequality or something.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
come on, guys. But same as George Floyd, even if Collins Koza was calling them the worst words in the world, whatever, if he was calling them the C word or a bunch of bitches or whatever, doesn't matter. You don't beat it to death because of anything, actually.
no.
Especially not because he's saying some naughty words, actually. I say he could be saying the most vile things under the sun, but doesn't matter. He did not deserve to get beaten to death. And it actually makes you sick that they try to use this kind of
I can see it's getting to you, which is good. Like I like upset Marius on my stream.
It's like shows like the no value for human life or anything. It's really...
There's a whole lot of really cool comments that's coming through all the time. So please keep sending us, because Marius and I are only going to irritate you for maximum another 15 minutes because then it's my bedtime. And but Anton made a point. Let me just find it, and it's kind of circling back to what we previously talked about: the wealth tax, prescribed assets, nationalizing the Saab being these major National Democratic Revolution talking points, and they just don't seem to want to let go of the things, Marius. Like, what on earth? It is the Cold War still for these people. They're still in the 1960s, like you said. The Berlin Wall still fucking stands. It was just built, the way they're carrying on. But where are they getting the money from for these projects? I mean, we're paying these Cubans, Cuban paperweights or Cuban slaves, a huge amount of money.
Well, I think now, the government still has money now, but I haven't read up on it as much as I should have yet, but we've approached the IMF for money, and that shows that the government is worried and the money is running out. But I do think another IMF loan is probably going to be last resort stuff. I think it's probably prescribed assets is going to be first, probably, and then probably nationalizing the Reserve Bank and printing money. And when that happens, then it's game over. Even when they go for pensions, then it's probably getting close to game over. But once money printer goes bang, then we've got a big issue. We all know what happens when the US can print money because they're the biggest economy in the world. And everybody wants US dollars, but no other country in the world can actually do that. I suppose maybe the Eurozone, maybe a little bit, whatever.
No, not even. Like the US's position with regards to the US dollar is a very unique and special privilege where they are after the end of the Bretton Woods Agreement, they've managed to position themselves to the detriment of literally everybody else. They are printing paper gold.
But you've probably traveled a little bit. I've been to lots of countries where the dollar is obviously not the currency, but they're happy to take dollars. So the dollars in a lot of countries you can still use it. It's basically the world's currency, and that's why. But look, it's probably also it can't happen indefinitely. The US is also probably going to come short if they carry on printing money like this. And then
there will be consequences, but they can get away with a hell of a lot more than a small economy like us.
Exactly.
We switched the money printer on. We probably won't get hyperinflation as fast as Zim, but it all depends.
We obviously won't get it in 6 months. We'll get it soonish, and then the value of savings is going to be gone. And we all know it's when the economy collapses, who suffers first is the poor. As always when these things happen. Then it's the middle class and whatever you. And remember, Zimbabwe is much smaller than us, and they had the escape valve of South Africa just across the border. We don't have that luxury. Look at Venezuela too. They had big economies like Colombia and Brazil next to them, where Venezuelans could get to. South Africans
and a lot of natural resources as well, in the sense of the oil that they exploited.
Yes,
which
exactly, which we've got that to a degree, but we've also, despite all our resources, South Africa is not even seen as a good mining destination anymore, because of our various regulations and so on. And people, I know a couple of people that work in the mining industry, and they're like, nobody will touch South Africa with a barge pole. And it's not because we've got so many resources in the country, but the guys are just like, it's not worth it for the hoops you have to jump through. You have to give away 25% of your company. You got to do this, you got to do that, and it's just not worth it for guys. So
we've priced ourselves out of the market effectively, even though we've got the commodities, we've got the minerals,
exactly. We've got the skills and so on. We've got I haven't been this despondent about South Africa for a long time, but I still think we have.
Welcome to the club of Afro pessimism, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we do. This place can work. We know it can work, and it worked under an ANC government. when, in under Thabo Mbeki. I didn't like everything Thabo Mbeki did. I mean, his AIDS policy was terrible. His policy on Zimbabwe wasn't great. He also said
there was
some
economic growth.
Exactly. He also said some race nationalist stuff, which was obviously wasn't a fan of. But he knew how to run an economy, and he knew you can't do. I mean, I think he's also quite an ideologue and a statist at heart, but he knew you can't go and flip and nationalize everything, because that's not how these things work. And he, let the free market pretty much do its thing. And we saw what happened. We had 5% growth. We had jobs were getting created. But then Thabo Mbeki was his own worst enemy as well. He didn't see the writing on the wall in 2007, thought he could beat Jacob Zuma, and he obviously couldn't. We all know what happened in 2007, and we all know what's happened in 13 years since then. And so, I mean, yeah, but I don't think all is lost, but I think it's still a hard fight for if people want South Africa to work. And the ANC, it's a tough beast to turn. But I mean, I think that, as I said, they're good people still in the ANC, and by 2024, I mean, the ANC could be out of power. Who knows? A lot can happen still in 4 years. So, and a lot can happen within the ANC itself. I mean, for better or for worse. So, but I think we're in for like the Chinese curse. I mean, we live in interesting times.
It's definitely interesting times. And I think what's going to happen, whether they plan this or not, is the fact that a lot of people are going to pivot away from being reliant on government infrastructure services, whatever, out of necessity and out of the case of it'll be once bitten, twice shy in a big way. And I don't know how the ANC is going to deal with losing that amount of power. But this lockdown has hugely nailed the fiscus. I mean, you've lost about 16 to 20% worth of income tax. Well, most of it, like, gone for the year. And It's not looking particularly promising later on. Since they're talking about stupid things like international tourism only from February next year, and domestic. Ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. And domestic tourism only from December. It's like, guys, if you keep an industry closed for almost a year, don't expect it to start up. It's gone. Like, you fucked it. It's
and tourism is such low hanging fruit. It's such an easy thing. Like, you don't need high skilled people. You can buy a flipping combi, and then you can go pick up tourists at the airport and drive them around the Kruger or whatever. I mean, I'm just oversimplifying it now. But I mean,
that's basically it. And if we really want
tourists come and they eat in restaurants and whatever, and there we go. People can be waiters and so on. So obviously not an ideal job, but it's better than being unemployed. So, and as I say, I mean, that's low hanging fruit. It can employ a lot of people, can bring a lot of money into the country if you just make things easy. And also, South Africans we always think we're exceptional, but actually, remember, we are a long haul destination. We need to make this place very attractive to Europeans and North Americans, and they can go to Brazil, they can go to Thailand, they can go to Goa in India or Australia, whatever the case is. We've got to make. Why do they want to come here? They've got to get value for money. They don't have to want to faff around with a flipping 7-page birth certificate to bring their kid in. They just want to rock up and say, "Here we go." Which also, I mean, we should make it easy for people. Shouldn't have to. I mean, even like the Chinese and the Indians, they shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get visas and so on. Even if only 10% of India or China are middle class, and that's the market we want to.
But it's a huge population.
That's still 100 million people just in India and 100 million people in China that you could get to come to South Africa. So, and also, I mean, it's very hard for Indian or Chinese to get a visa for South Africa. I mean, as far as I know, you have to go to the embassy in Delhi or Beijing. So if you live in some whatever, godforsaken bits of Outer Mongolia when it comes to Africa, first you got to fly to Beijing and get your visa. Then you can only come to South Africa or whatever the case is. You just make it easy for people to come here.
Exactly. We love self-sabotaging. We love sabotaging. We have so much potential. I think that's the reason I'm not completely tearing my hair out. I just want the government to fuck off so that the rest of us who actually know what we're doing can carry on with business and create our own economy and tell them to get knotted. And Anton's getting really impatient with me, so I'm going to have to ask you. So Marius, you are not a gun guy, but we're probably going to have to try to get you in a shooting range at some point.
Look, I've never shot a gun in my life. I wouldn't mind shooting one, but
we can organize you more than one. We can organize a whole selection.
No, I'm in, definitely. Look, I like watching movies about actually getting shot, but just for me, I myself, I'm not a fan of guns, but I think if you can prove you're competent and you're not obviously going to go shoot up a school or whatever, then I don't see why you shouldn't
It's
be allowed to have
expensive. It's expensive to shoot up a school. There's lots of kids that we can't afford all that ammunition. Like
exactly. But I
and
shouldn't have said that, but that's good. But yeah, like I'm not. I mean, like I said, I'm not a. You know, I'll be honest. Like I did think when you ran for the ZACP, I thought your policy of training kids to shoot in schools was a bit like, hey, I don't know if I can vote for these acts. I mean, I did vote for the acts at the end, but I was just like,
well,
yeah,
thank you.
like,
We appreciate the cross. You're one of like 16,000 people.
and I think I definitely got at least 4. I think I got 4 people out of 4 other
Oh,
people's votes.
excellent! Like, great work. No, but we'll get you. We'll organise because Marius is stuck in Benoni. I'm obviously in Cape Town, so there's a bit of a geographical disparity here, but it's a bridge that we can cross, double cross if we need to. So we're going to make it happen. We don't have to film it. We're just going to make it happen. We're going to go have fun. And
I'd be keen to. Like I said, just for me personally, I'm not a gun guy, but I think you should be allowed to have one if you want. That's my, you know.
Well, the cool thing about this is it's the same attitude I think as we've got. Like, so I don't smoke at all, but I think this prohibition on tobacco is abhorrent, and it's the same. Like, okay, both of us drink, so neither of us can be like, well, we don't really care about alcohol, but the alcohol ban is equally stupid. And I'm busy writing 2 articles on prohibition. One was about knife and gun prohibition that didn't work and why it didn't work. And then I want to follow it up with the same thing on alcohol and cigarettes. How many countries in the world are there that actually have a prohibition on cigarettes, Marius? Like, I'm not aware of any except us.
I read Bhutan, which is like between
Bhutan.
India and it's like in the Himalayas.
Yeah,
like
it's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Apparently, you can't buy tobacco is illegal there. Apparently, but that's the only place in the world. And even I think India banned alcohol for lockdown and somewhere else, I think. There were only like a handful of countries. Like, but I'll be honest, one thing, like I could kind of get on board with the alcohol ban if they'd made it more, like explained it better. If they said, look guys, we're going to get this peak. If we get to a situation where we're having X amount of people in hospitals, then we're going to ban booze because you don't know how to behave yourselves. Then I'd be like, maybe, okay, cool, I get it. But they banned it when there was nobody in hospitals.
Yeah.
Now, when we start to get people going to hospitals again, then they allow it again. And then people also get all panicky. Are they going to ban again? Are they not going to ban it? But if they said, cool, guys, this is the situation. This is why we've got to this point that we all told you that we're going to get to. And when this happened, that was going to be the trigger. So in 2 days' time, we're banning alcohol for 2 weeks. Go buy as much as you want. And we will tell you well ahead of time we've got to ban it again. That would have made sense because I get the prohibition and how it takes up bed space and ex don't go drive drunk and stab each other and what have you. But also, I mean, I like a drink, so I'm glad the booze ban has been lifted. But I do get the why.
But of course, we're not going to get rational policy from Biggie Tele. I mean, exactly. He's so drunk on power, he's just loving this. Exactly. The fact is, we're being treated like children, and I think that's the part that got to me more than anything else. Like, just to summarize, because we're basically nearing the end. Do you have any like final lockdown freedom IRR gun whiskey alcohol thoughts, Marius?
Look, I mean, I just think this lockdown just shown that. I don't think anybody was surprised, but that's shown a lot of people. I think we're still seeing a lot of apologists for the ANC, but I think more people than before realize that's what the ANC is, and just how it's, and including the president, how creating this National Command Council and all this, really undemocratic stuff, and realize that the ANC is, it doesn't actually know what it's doing, and it's running the economy into the ground, which it's been doing for the past 10 years, and that they're not fans of liberal democracy. And there's something we should all be concerned for about South Africa. We need to start doing what you can now, just, whatever it is to ensure that we have a country that we can all live in and that we all want to live in.
I think that's a really positive thing. And guys, the RR does a really an amazing lot of good work. You guys actually go head to head with the ANC far more, I think, than gets into the news. You write really good policy. And all in all, you want us to have alcohol, guns, and cigarettes, which is really the hot talking points right now for me. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, ATF. So go support the IRR guys. Marius does excellent research. I'm looking forward to, I know things aren't changing enough for you to write another Broken Blue line, but if you do, I'm definitely going to read it, and I'm definitely going to write about it. So, Marius,
can I
thank
just
you.
ask you, Gideon, have you ever been in lockdown because you haven't even grown a beard?
No, I've secretly been breaking it so much. I go to my Algerian barber, and he gives me a close shave every night. But you're rocking an epic beard, because for those who don't know, Marius, he doesn't usually look like this at all.
I haven't shaved since the beginning, the middle of March, I think. So it's
getting. Well, are you going to shave again, or is this?
Yeah, like... no. It's getting a bit annoying now. So I think I'll cut it at some point when we can get haircuts again. I think all that. So.
Well, we're definitely going to have you on again, because we're talking so much shit and people are like loving it. So we will. We'll do this again, and everyone, thank you very much, Marius. Thank you. Please stay on the line for me. I'm just going to say cheers to everyone, and I'll say cheers to you properly in studio. But it's been lekker, and I'll do another live stream, a solo one tomorrow, and then just remind you, it's Whiskey Friday with Brian on Friday again. But I'll let you know what time. Thanks, everyone. Have a lekker on, and bye-bye. And there's a wave.